If I were to sit and write down the blueprint of what I would consider a perfect game, the main bullet points would very likely sound a lot like what you can expect in Aeterna Noctis. Aeternum Studios has faced an uphill battle since release, and I wish I could say that a year later that the bumps have all been ironed out. I can confidently say though that this game is a masterpiece and in my top 3 Metroidvanias of all time, but you're going to want to listen to the full review before you pick up a copy. As always, if you enjoy the work I put into these videos, consider leaving a like and subscribing, and don't forget to hit that little bell when you do. Let's get to it. Aeterna Noctis tells the story of a split marriage between once ruling factions. You see, chaos created the universe and all of its inhabitants, deciding to populate the world with different races and viewpoints and have them governed by his appointed leaders, the King of Darkness and his wife, the Queen of Light. Unfortunately for the world of Aeterna, the two factions rose against each other and gave way to constant wartime and death. This offended Chaos, who took it as an insult to himself and cursed both faction leaders to eternal war and immortality beyond death through infinite cycles. The game starts you off at the beginning of one of these cycles, powerless and full of hate, on the path to regaining your abilities as the King of Darkness himself, so you can once again end the cycle and begin anew. While the story mainly takes place through context and small scripts that you'll read through data points, there's also a surprising amount of high-quality animated cutscenes throughout that add to the lore, and it's all so well done. Personally, being someone who's not even that into story, I was absolutely in love with what was told throughout the 70 hours I inhabited this world. This is the type of game begging for an animated adaptation. I just could not get enough. Though I will say that I never felt the side characters were nearly as fleshed out as the story between the two main characters. They were memorable-ish in some aspects. But all in all, other than the Oracle, they kind of all just felt like stylized placeholders, and I would have loved to have seen more. Aesthetically, the best way to describe Aeterna is an edgy Hollow Knight, or even better, a cross between Castlevania and Hollow Knight, which, in my opinion, is a best of both worlds type scenario. Designed frame by frame through traditional illustration techniques, make no mistake about it, this is a work of passion. Though there are missteps here, and Nonsensical 2D has an excellent analysis video if you're at all interested in exactly what I mean, but the long and short of it is, there's at first too much detail and bloom effects. In a game that requires technical precision throughout, it does feel cluttered at times and hard to read, though I will say for the most part, after my eyes adjusted to the scenery, it became basically a non-issue for myself, and instead was one of my favorite aspects. This game is pure eye candy, people. Throughout 16 different areas, and as I mentioned before, roughly 70 hours of gameplay, it never failed to exceed expectations, and cement itself as one of the most beautiful Metroidvanias created, period. Gameplay mechanics, while also inspired clearly by Hollow Knight, also take inspiration from one of the most brutal parts of that game, being the Path of Pain, or rather from pure platforming games like Celeste or Super Meat Boy. The game requires precision and dedication throughout in its traversal, while also introducing a mechanic in its arrow teleporting ability that I've never seen in a game. I don't know how many times I had to catch my breath, sometimes one segment after another, in disbelief that I was able to conquer a particularly challenging sequence of platforming. And this is where Aeterna excels the most. The checkpoints are fair, the combat is well done, the bosses are memorable and fun to overcome, and while being the most difficult game that I've completed, it always felt fair to me. And by the end, the progression that I felt to myself as a gamer was unrivaled. Previous sequences that had me in a fit of anger I now did with my eyes closed. But you see, there's a dark side of Aeterna. One that unfortunately doesn't present itself until around the 40 to 50 hour mark. One that makes this game a title that I'll never be able to recommend to anyone. Now, I can't vouch for or offer an opinion on how this game performs on any other platform other than the one where I played it, which is the PS5. But I can tell you that according to extensive research on Reddit, this is not an issue secluded to the PlayStation version of Aeterna. Even a year later, after the trials that plagued its release, Aeterna Noctis is completely and utterly broken. This is a classic case of reaching too far out of your scope. Now, I don't envy Aeternum Studios' attempts at quality control of a project this massive, but as the developers, they are absolutely to blame for not reining in their ambitions. You see, the game on a consistent basis crashes and devastatingly erases hours and hours of progress, seemingly without any reason or logical solution. I lost roughly 6 to 10 hours of gameplay through various crashes with no hopes of retrieval, and in fact, towards the end of my road to platinuming the game, every new segment I was gripped with fear of the game crashing and losing all my progress. Without fail, every time I ended my sessions for the night, when I'd wake up in the morning, I'd be back in a place I already completed, and in fact, even after finishing the game at 100% completion and wiping my brow in relief, the game unexpectedly crashed again after I had already closed it, and now my main save file sits at 86%. My brother, who also played on the PS5, lost nearly 20 hours of gameplay in a soul-crushing crash that simply made him not want to play anymore. And I don't blame him. I mean, nobody in their right minds wants to spend time on a game as brutal as this, only for it to mean nothing. Like I said, the game has been out for a year, and in fact, DLC for it is slated to be released at the beginning of this year, so I think it's safe to say this is as good as it gets. I wish so badly that I could recommend this beautiful game that had such an impact on me, but I can't. I still want to give credit where credit is due, but I won't blame you for skipping out on this one. For me, the game was a 9 and in my top 3 Metroidvanias of all time. But as a result of everything I mentioned, and in the state it is, I can't recommend it. And I firmly believe that anything as utterly broken as this can't possibly be given anything higher than a 5. So that's what it is. Take it or leave it. Thanks for watching.